The Way of the Heart. Lesson 5. Now we begin. Beloved friends, greetings unto you. We come forth in this hour to continue the pathway which builds the structure, the highway, if you will, by which you may learn to follow and therefore master the way of the heart. A way in life means to have chosen from all possibilities that one which will stand out as the way to which you are committed, the way to which you devote the whole of your attention by granting your willingness that the way be followed. And just as when you take the journey upon your earth by making the commitment to take the journey, you avail yourselves of experiences that could not come to you in any other way. When you go to a university to pursue a pathway of a degree, although you begin with a certain idea of what that pathway may hold or bring you, is it not true that the relationship which come along the way, the knowledge it reveals itself to you, and even the end result of the accomplishment of the degree, always seems to be different than and much richer than you could have imagined when you began your journey? Therefore understand well that the way of the heart requires the willingness to commit. And commitment is nothing more than the deliberate action that something will be so. And just as with all aspects of experience you have ever known, when all of your beingness is involved in the willingness to make a decision, there is literally nothing that can prevent you from the accomplishment of your goal. Rest assured, then, that whenever you believe you have not succeeded or not completed some decision fueled by desire, it is because you are simply not wholly committed, or it means that you decided to change your mind. And when you change your mind, you literally change what you experience in the world, or the solar system in which yourself spins. The way of the heart, then, does indeed require the decision of commitment. And rest assured, I say unto you, that when you wholly commit to discovering the way of the heart, you will discover a way of being in the world that is not here. You will discover a way of walking through life in which you experience being uplifted by something that seems to be forever beyond you, yet is within you as the core and the essence of your very beingness. Your way will not be understandable by the world. Your way will not even be comprehensible within yourself. You will be living from mystery, moving from mystery to mystery to mystery, uplifted and carried by something that brings a satisfaction and a fulfillment to the depth of your soul, far beyond anything you could imagine. Is it worth it, then, to commit to the way of the heart? Yes. The way of the heart culminates with the recognition that you do not live life at all, but rather that life is living you. One of its characteristics is a development of the witness, a quality of consciousness, a way of being, in which you seem to be witnessing everything that arises and flows through you and around you from a place of utter stillness. Stillness does not mean non-activity. It does mean non-attachment to activity, whether it be arising and falling away of the cancer in the body, the arising and falling away of relationships, the rising and falling away of a solar system. You will discover that there is a place within you that can look upon all things with perfect equanimity, perfect acceptance, and perfect love. For in mastery of the way of the heart, you will discover that nothing is unacceptable to you, and only what is accepted can be transcended. You will discover a way of being in which nothing any longer compels you. Not even the desire to know God compels you any longer, for the need of it has been completed. Then there arises the way of being in the world that is indeed not here, for you will feel no restlessness, no need to direct your journey. No questions will arise, you will be at peace, and in that peace the breath of God will move through you. And you will become as the wind, knowing not where you came from or to where you are going. But you will abide in perfect trust and perfect rest, and the world may not know you, but your Father will know you, and you will know your God. In the way of the heart, the most primary and fundamental perception which seems to fuel ordinary human consciousness has been finally transcended. The perception of a separate maker and doer has been dissolved, and once again, you will understand the depth and profundity of the simple terms in this sentence. Of myself, I do nothing, but through me, the Father does all things. To rest in such a perception means that you have come to realize that the self that you are is merely a conduit through which mystery lives itself, through which love pours forth. You will realize that there is nothing to be gained or lost in this world. You will know what it means to recognize that you literally have nowhere to go and nothing to achieve. You will become empty and spacious. And yet, paradoxically, while the body lasts, you will appear to be as everyone else. You will arise in the morning, brush your teeth. When the body is hungry, you will feed it. You will laugh with your friends. You will yawn when the body is a bit tired. And yet, though it all, there will be a quality of awareness called the witness that is simply watching it all, waiting to be moved by the wind of spirit. And though others may not see it, virtually everything you utter will carry the sound of truth. You know not how spirit will work through you, nor will you care, because you see, when there is no maker or doer or director, it won't matter to you. That is what it means to live as the wind. For the wind does not concern itself with where it's been or where it's going. It is moved by some mysterious source that cannot be located at all, and yet it blows, and as it blows, its effects are experienced. Imagine then a life in which all that you do is not for yourself. Imagine a way of life in which what you do is not for anyone else. Imagine a way of life in which creativity, living, flows forth from a source so deep within you and around you that no language or dogma can contain it. A force and a source that knows how to express itself through you in such a way that is constantly and only serving the atonement, the awakening of all of creation to the truth of God's presence. The way of the heart then does indeed unfold, if you will, along a certain pathway. And in this hour we will address the stages of that pathway in a general sense. And then we will speak of the most important characteristics to be cultivated along the path. First, desire is everything, and without it not a thing can arise. Therefore, indeed, what you desire is of utmost importance. Desire, then, perfect union with God. Desire, then, to be Christ incarnate. Desire, then, to be all that your Creator has created you to be, even if you haven't an idea of what that might be. For when you hold desire within your beingness, and when you've moved through the process of coming to master the energy of desire, and again, mastery does not mean control. When you have mastered the energy of desire by grounding it always in a desire to be as you are created to be, then indeed all of your life and all your subsequent or subsidiary desires will come to serve the grand desire. When you come into that state of being, nothing shall be impossible unto you. And why? Because you're not the one doing it. You are merely a piece of thread in a very cosmic tapestry, being woven by the Creator of all of creation, who alone knows how to weave the tapestry of a new age, of a new paradigm, of a healing of this planet humanity. And so the first stage is indeed the stage of desire. And only by feeling desire, and not by suppressing it, can you truly begin to move toward the stage of mastery, in which the energy of desire always serves that higher will, which is the will of God for you. And as we have said to you before, when your will is in alignment with the will of God, you will discover that God's will for you is that you be genuinely happy, through and through, content, fulfilled, at peace, empowered, capable, responsible. Desire in time is cultivated through intention. For you see, you have used time to teach yourself how to be distracted by all the thoughts and perceptions that make up this cosmic soup called your world. And all of you have known the frustration of having a desire, and then as soon as you walk out the door, a friend pulls up and says, "Hey, let's go to the beach." And then you never make it to class, even though your desire is to get that degree. You have cultivated the art of being seduced by distraction. Therefore, it is necessary to utilize time to cultivate intention. For without intention, desire cannot become the crystal clear focus, the laser-like focus that can cut through the dross of this world, that a new creation can flow forth through you. Intention is not the same as holding a strong egoic, willed commitment to make something happen. For the way of the heart recognizes that you have not known how to achieve the fulfillment you seek at the level of the soul, for the simple reason that if you did, you would have already accomplished it. In the way of the heart, intention doesn't mean putting your nose to the grindstone and taking no for an answer. It means rather that you cultivate within your thought processes the art of remembering what you are truly here for. You are here to remember that you are the thought of love and form. You are here to remember that you are one with God. You are here to remember that what I have called Abba, the Father, though it goes by many names, is the source of your only reality. And you are living in reality only to the degree that that one is living through you. Therefore, intention in the way of the heart means to utilize time each day to focus your intention on the desire to be Christ incarnate. Intention is that energy, or that use of the mind that creates, through consistent practice, the channel, if you will, through which desire begins to move down and re-educate the emotional body, and even the cellular structure of the physical body, and all the lesser avenues of thinking that occur within the intellect, so that everything involved in your being is integrated, working together, and focused on the fulfillment of that one grand desire to accept your function in this world. And your function is healing your sense of separation from God. How then to apply intention? Each day, just as you have used time to teach yourself to be easily distracted, you need to only apply one question to which you ask yourself daily. What is it that I most desire? What am I doing on this planet? What am I committed to? Those latter are just other forms of the fundamental question. And as you keep practicing asking the question, the answer will become clearer and clearer. For you see, it is the question that influences, stimulates, gives birth to the answer. For the universe is always answering your questions, and when you ask unclear questions, you get unclear answers. Therefore, become crystal clear with your intention and remind yourself of it daily. My intention is to use time constructively for the relearning of what it means to abide in the kingdom of heaven and to fulfill my function. And my function is healing. And healing requires the presence of Christ, for only Christ can express the love that brings healing into being. Desire and attention, and in the field of time, these stages unfold as one matures in the way of the heart. Desire and intention are critical. The third stage of the process, whereby the mind is wholly corrected and one returns home, is the stage of allowance. For the egoic world does not teach you to allow, it teaches you to strive. You must be the maker and the doer. You must find a way to manipulate or control your environment in order that it conform itself to the image you are holding in your mind. And all of that is well and good, and there are many beings who learn some valuable lessons by following the path of certain teachers that will teach you that you can create whatever you want. And that seems like such a big deal until you realize that what you are doing all the time, you are always creating exactly what you decree, And it's no big deal, and it's not a secret. And there will be those that will teach you. Well, just go into your mind. Ask yourself what you want. And when you see the picture of that Mercedes, then you simply do all the little magical tricks, and pretty soon you'll end up with a Mercedes. The problem with that, although it can be a useful stage, is that the intellect, the worldly part of your mind, can only desire what has been programmed to desire. The worldly part of your mind says, well, I have to transport my body around in this plane. Automobiles do that. The world tells me that a Mercedes is a grand way of doing this. Therefore, I will create the desire of wanting a Mercedes. And when you manifest the Mercedes, you fool yourself into thinking that you've made great progress when in fact all you've done is done what you've always done. You have chosen what your experience will be, and you have manifested it. There's nothing new about that, although by doing so, you can begin to regain confidence in your ability to manifest. But the way of the heart is about something else. Allowance in this pathway means that you begin to view your life differently. It is not a struggle to get out of high school and create a career by which you create golden coins, by which you can create the proper house and the proper environment so that your ego feels successful and therefore being worth love. Be honest with yourself. Is not your world built on such premises? If only I can make my life look successful around me, then I will be accepted. Then I can love myself at least a little. Maybe I can get other people to love me. Now, that's not it at all. The way of the heart begins with the recognition that you are already loved by the only source that matters, that you have come for a much higher purpose that can be made manifest in the ways of the world, but is not of the world. Allowance, then, is the cultivation of a way of looking at the events of your life, not as obstacles of getting what you want, but as a stepping stone, each of which presents you with the blessing of the lessons required to heal the obstacle, not to success, but to the presence of love as the source and ground of your being. In the stage of allowance, then, we begin to cultivate an acceptance of all things in our experience. We begin to see that because we have made a commitment to awakening and incarnating only Christ, that the universe is already conspiring to bring the people and events into our lives on a moment-to-moment basis that can best provide us with exactly what we most need to learn or become aware of. And so messengers are sent. That messenger could come in the form of someone whom you fall in love with, and there is something there for you to learn. It could be that you've been blocking yourself from feeling love for other people, and now somebody finally comes that blasts down the door, and you can't help but feel the feeling. The messenger could be someone who comes as a grain of sand within the oyster that causes the friction within you that nudges you from sleep, and you realize that you've been operating out some very dysfunctional patterns, and that you've got to get a better grip, shall we say, upon the truth of who you are. It may be that you need to learn to express your feelings more. It may be that you need to accept your own creativity more. Something will bring up to you, through your messengers, that which caused you to finally be responsible and be honest about where you are. For instance, if you think, well, I never get angry anymore. After all, I'm a very spiritual person. I just got out of the seminary and I know all it now. So, yes, I'll just live in heavenly bliss. And events begin to happen. Perhaps, we'll use this for an example. Perhaps a gay couple moves into your neighborhood and you discover that you have some very deeply seated perceptions that there is something wrong with that sexual orientation. They are messengers sent to you by the universe to push you to look more deeply. Allowance, then, is the cultivation of a quality of awareness in which you rest in the recognition that your life is no longer your own to dictate and control, but rather you're giving it over to the source of your own beingness. So the depth of wisdom and the depth of the ocean that knows best how to bring about what is required to push up the dross from within your consciousness so that you can release it. Allowance cultivates trust. Allowance is the way in which intention and desire come to work ever more fully in the third dimension of your experience, the field of time. Allowance is a submission, but not a naive submission. Allowance changes your perception of what you see as the world around you. You begin to realize that you don't really live in a real world at all. You live in a field of vibrations and energy that is operated by the law of attraction, resonance. And you begin to be willing to allow certain things to fall out of your life, even family and friends, trusting that because of your desire and intention, what passes out of your life must be okay, for it will be replaced by new vibrational patterns which come in the form of messengers, events, places, persons, and things that can carry you on the upward spiral of awakening. Allowance means the beginning stages of cultivation of humility and the recognition that you must finally submit to something beyond the intellect and the control of the egoic part of the mind. That the maker and doer that's been trying to do it all is finally recognized as being inadequate. As the three stages mature, you rest in the final stage of surrender. And surrender means that there is no longer any restlessness. Surrender means you know through every fiber of your being that there's no one here living a life. There is life flowing through the body, mind, personality for as long as it lasts. Here is where the mystical transformation is culminated or completed. It is here that you understand the meaning of the teaching. I live, yet not I, but the Christ that dwelleth as me. Surrender is a stage in which perfect peace is the foundation, not for passivity, not for inactivity, but even more activity. You find yourself, as long as you are in the world, being busier and busier, asked to do more and more. You become even more responsible. And eventually you come to see that because you are Christ, you are responsible for the whole of creation. And you cannot think a thought without disturbing the farthest of stars. It is that responsibility from which you have shrunk and tried to contain yourself as a tiny myopic piece of foam, all because you feared being responsible for the whole. But the way of the heart corrects your perception, in which you come to recognize that your greatest joy, your greatest fulfillment, is in wholly and deliberately accepting responsibility for the whole of creation. Why? Because you suddenly realize you're not the maker and the doer, that you can accept responsibility for anything and everything because through you all power under heaven and earth is made to flow, to manifest the love of God. So in short, it's in God's hand, not yours. Nevertheless then, not my will, but thine be done. Does that begin to make sense to you? Do you see how it changes how you've been taught to interpret my teaching? Desire, intention, allowance, surrender. But it is a surrender into a way of being that the world can never know. It is a surrender into a way of being in which you may never receive, what you call this in your world an Oscar for your acting. But it is a way of being in which your consciousness becomes totally open to your union with all of creation. And you will talk with a leaf as it falls from the tree. You will see the soul of a kitten at your pet, and you will talk with angels and masters. You will be involved in board meetings in the high cosmic conference rooms. And you will know that the body-mind that once taught was yours is little more than a temporary teaching device, a tool to be picked up and utilized at God's direction, and one to be put aside when its usefulness is done, so that even when it is time to go through the transition that you know is death, nothing will disturb your peace. And as the body dies, which means simply that your attention begins to release itself from it, just like the hand of a carpenter is released from the handle of a hammer, and the hammer simply is laid down on the table, and the carpenter goes in for dinner and forgets about it. You'll be able to watch even the process that your world calls death with total equanimity and joy. You'll watch your spirit disengage from the body. You'll watch it crumble into lifelessness so that all your attention becomes focused in a wholly new dimension. A dimension that is so vast that you will be able to look down upon the earth plane, not unlike the way you might choose to hold a pebble in the palm of your hand. And in one quick glance, you see everything about the pebble and nothing's hidden. Responsibility. I am one that has chosen to assume the responsibility for the pebble called Earth, and all of life that dwells therein. You too will know that energy and reality of wrapping your fingers around the entirety of the solar system, and becoming, shall we say, the God or the Savior of that dimension. And it begins by choosing to take responsibility for your pebble, your domain, your solar system, your personal dimension, and that, again, begins by saying, I and I alone am the source of what I experience and perceive. I am not a victim of the world I see. And everything I experience I have called to myself, plain and simple. No excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way it is. And gone will be your immaturity, your resistance to simply being responsible for your experience. The way of the heart then cultivates a maturity of desire, intention, allowance, surrender. And no single characteristics of a greater importance than this, and we've already mentioned it. It's called humility. Not a feigned humility that is taught in certain world religions, but a genuine humility. For humility doesn't mean that you stand in front of a group of people who stand and give you a standing ovation, and you go, oh gosh, you don't have to do that, it's not important. So that you can look like you're humble when inwardly you're saying, oh God, that feels so good. Clap a little louder. Clap a little longer. But I won't tell you that. Know you that kind of humility? Isn't it the kind of humility you were taught in your school? Don't stand there and beat up the chest and say, yes, thank you. I think I'm really doing this well now. You were not taught that that's okay. Genuine humility flows from the deep-seated recognition that you cannot save yourself, that you are created and not creator, that you are effect and not cause in an absolute sense, that something called life is not yours, that there is something beyond your capacity of containment and intellectual understanding. And if that something ever decides to give up loving you, you would cease to be, that no matter how deep you go into the depth of God, no matter how deep you achieve an awareness and the consciousness of union with God, that what God is forever beyond your growing capacity to understand God. It is like an ocean of infinite depth, and when you realize that, strive as you might, you'll never wrap yourself, your little self, around that source. You will rest into humility, genuine humility. And why is this important? Because, and mark these words well, as you progress along the path of the way of heart, as you dissolve and loosen the shackles upon your mind, as the interior conflicts are healed and settled, as you begin to accept the abundance that the Father would bestow upon you in all levels of life and all levels of feeling and perception, as you begin to taste the grandeur and the greatness that would flow through you, you will discover that the enemies become more subtle. Every child views at some stage its parents as being its enemy, doesn't it? What do you mean I can't have the car tonight? What do you mean I must be home by 10 p.m.? The parents become the enemy. But that's a very immature and basic and naive level. As you move in more into mastery, you will be sorely tempted to believe that you've done. You'll be sorely tempted to believe, I can do this. The prayers I used to do when I began, the simple exercise of awareness I used when I started my path, I don't need them anymore. I have mastered that. Any time you hear a voice within yourself saying, I'm done, you may rest assured you're not, and you stand in danger of losing what you've gained. Humility is the recognition that the more you move into mastery, the more there is the desire for discipline and vigilance. Discipline does not mean doing something hard that you don't like to do. Discipline is like the skill of an artist that cultivates and refines the skill, simply out of the deep desire and delight to create more beautifully, that's all. To discipline a muscle is done by an athlete, so that muscle works even more beautifully than it did the day before, out of the sheer delight to extend greater beauty into the world. Therefore, the discipline of the mind that is required is to recognize that while the body lasts, and indeed while you remain in existence, the creations of consciousness that are unlike love have created a whole lot of vibratory patterns that would just love to pull you down. It is the recognition that there can be a delight in consciously repeating the decision to teach only love, and to selectively choose only the vibrational patterns in your consciousness to be allowed into your consciousness that reflect the truth and the beauty and the worthiness of who you are. Judgment cannot reflect such light. Anger and hatred cannot do it. Fear and paranoia, fear of rejection, fear of opinions of others. Such vibrations can never reflect the regalness, the greatness, the grandeur of your being. Therefore, understand well that humility is absolutely essential. For paradoxically, as greatness is expressed through you, the temptation still is to allow egoic energies to make a home in your mind. And the ego's voice will say, "Boy, you're really quite a master, you know. You really deserve all this adulation. Why don't you keep 10% of it for yourself?" A master accepts the love offered, the gratitude offered by those whom he or his teachings have touched, and gives it all to God, recognizing that of themselves these things could not have been done. I learned, too, to be tempted. And when those would come to me who were sick found healing in my presence, it was very tempting to want to say, "Yes, look what I've done. I've really earned this. I spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. I've been to India and Tibet. I've been to England. I've studied with all the masters of Egypt. Yes, I really deserve to be seen as a healer and a teacher." But I learned through humility to remember the simplicity that of myself I can do nothing. I cultivated within myself the art of always being a student of love, and not the professor of love, who thinks he's done just because he has a lot of letters after his name. So you see that as you progress, and as you allow more of the abundance of God's love to flow through you, you begin to stand up out of the crowd, and you begin to attract those that want the light. And as that occurs, you practice discipline and vigilance by remembering humility always, until you are remembering it with every breath. And why? If you are living in this world and feel that no one looks up to you, no one takes you as an authority, there is only one reason. You have resisted the truth of your being, and through denial have pushed God's light away out of your fear, your deep-seated fear, that you might appear to be different than everyone else. And the world would teach you to be a doormat so that you fit in, and you don't ruffle anybody's feathers. But as you become empowered, one way you'll know that it's occurring is that some people won't like you. You'll push their buttons just by walking into the room, for darkness abhors light. It's that simple. Humility is absolutely essential. Through the doorway of humility, the light of power can be turned on through you in even greater voltage. And if that voltage doesn't seem to be flowing through your mind, look well to see if you are remembering humility and giving yourself to it. For the light of God can only shine through you to the degree that you are willing to take responsibility for it, which involves giving the fruits of it back to the source and not claiming it as your own. And when you claim nothing for yourself, all things can flow through you. And the Holy Spirit can gather millions of beings to come to you in many planes, because it knows you will not distort the love of God by usurping God's position and putting yourself upon the throne. Humility is a chief characteristic to cultivate. Therefore, when you pray, indeed ask for greatness. Let the Father know that you are ready for the fullness of Christ to be incarnate, and simply hold the promise within that you will always remember that you are not the doer and the maker. You are merely the one who has come to recognize that only the love of God can fulfill you as a soul. Only fulfillment of your purpose to be a channel for love can bring you the success that you truly seek. When you are fully committed to that, rather than being committed to wondering about other people's opinions, then that power can begin to move through you. And when you are willing to let go of the world, heaven will come to replace it. When you're willing to let go of your need for egoic grandness, true grandeur will begin to pour forth through you. There is a paradox within spirit. Learn to discern it. Become a master of it, and never neglect the need for discipline based on the foundation of humility. You see, this is what has caused you to fear the energy of desire, because in the past, and that can go back a long way, you have decided to find out what it would be like to let go all the power be claimed as your own, to be used to serve the voice of ego. And that is what you are afraid of. But if you cultivate these stages and found them in humility, you will never need to fear the misuse of desire. Therefore, in your prayers, as often as you can remember to do so, remember that what you decree is. Speak clearly within yourself. Source, Creator, God, Goddess, all that is. Abba, I am ready to be what you created me to be. I choose to remember that I am effect and not cause. Thy will be done, knowing that your will is my full happiness. Reveal, then, that path through which that happiness can be known, for my way has never worked, but your way always does. Then, in each day, remember the energy of appreciation. It is well and good to appreciate one another, but in the privacy of your own meditation and prayer, appreciate how the power of that source of love I have called Abba or God is living and moving and breathing to bring the people, the books, the teachers, the experience that are gently unraveling the cocoon of ego around you, awakening you to the truth and the beauty in its majesty and the grandeur and the greatness that life itself is, that wants to breathe you as magically and powerfully as it breathes through a thunderstorm, or the leaf on a tree, or the radiance in a newborn baby's eyes. That life is what you are. That life is the presence of God's love, the depth of the ocean welling up in the waves of the creation. Let therefore that life alone be your guide in all things, and rest in appreciation before the infinite mystery that life is. And say yes to it. Say yes to life, that you are willing to let the fullness of it wash through you and carry you into ever-deepening understanding and comprehension of all that God is. And indeed, if you would well receive it, resting in the awareness of divine humility is the sweetest of experiences that you can ever know. Many of you look upon me going, "Oh, where Jeshua abides, would I ever love to be there?" Think a thought and you're with someone. Think a thought and you're in that universe. You never have to blink an eye because you don't have one. I tell you this, where I abide is in a vibrational frequency where many, many other beings whose consciousness never wavers for an instant, from the deep appreciation and humility before the mystery of all that God is, the great delight of knowing that we live, yet not us, but our Creator lives as us. That only difference between being a master and being a student is that the master has mastered the art of always being a student. Think about that one. Desire, intention, allowance, surrender. What do you truly want? Are you willing to feel it and let that thread of desire carry you home? Can you remember to use time constructively? By focusing your intention, by reminding yourself of what you're truly here for. You're not here to survive. You're here to live as the truth of who you are. Allowance. Not a passive acceptance of things as they are, but a recognition that there is something quite beautiful at work. There is an intelligence, a love that knows you better than yourself, and is presenting you moment to moment with jewels and gems and lessons and blessings, that something is weaving the tapestry of your life, and nothing is happening by accident. Surrender. The cultivation of the recognition that your happiness can be found only in the submission of your will to the will of God. For your will has been in conflict and struggle and limitation. The Father's will is that you live without conflict, in peace and joy and fulfillment and happiness. 'Tis called bliss. Humility. If ever you wonder how to anchor your awareness in humility, stop what you are doing and ask yourself this question. Did I create myself? You will know darn well that the answer is no. I don't even know when I was created. Something birthed me. What is it? That will bring you a humility rather quickly. Do you know how to give birth to a star? No. Do you know how to give birth to a leaf on a tree? No. Do you even know how to lift your hand from your lap? No. What then do you know? Nothing. Allow yourself to understand that you don't know anything. And in that state of divine ignorance, you will rest in a humility that finally allows your Creator to move through you and reveal to you all things. So, beloved friends, the way of the heart is the way which corrects perceptions and brings right-mindedness, so that you are no longer the maker and the doer and the director. Your opinions will come to mean nothing to you whatsoever, and out of the grand emptiness you will discover perfect peace, and life will bear you on its wings, and through you, life will express in ever greater dimensionality the exquisite and infinite love and power and creativity that is God, until you swear that God is all there is, and there will be no place to find a trace of you. For if enlightenment is the ending of separation, how can there be a maker and a doer? Can the wave direct itself? The ego is the attempt to do so, and it always fails. Peace, then, be with you always. Let peace pervade your being at all times. And know that you are safe in the love of God that arises from the great source of mystery, and would move through you with every breath you breathe and every word you speak, until you hear only that impetus of guidance that wells up from the depth of your being as a gentle voice that you trust completely. And you will know the freedom that you seek. And with that we indeed would leave you now, yet we go nowhere, for you are already where we are. Trust this, know this, rely on this, and explore the way of the heart, and by such exploration you will come to know the truth of love. Be you therefore at peace, beloved friends. Amen.